to talk about your health. Living a primal lifestyle.
You know, we have Tom from Tampa on the phone. Hey, Tom. Good morning. It's bright and early now, huh?
Hey, Paige. Good.
Hi, Tom.
How you guys doing, Nico?
Doing great.
Good. Hey, your newsletter's outstanding, man. I'm telling you, man, it is outstanding. And so is the Primal Edge. I love that stuff. I'd never be without it. I mean, I've been on it now 3-4 months, man. I mean, it's just, I can't get over how good I feel.
Primal Edge is, people are raving about it. People who are trying it, they know because you can feel it.
Would not be without it.
Call now, toll free at 1-877-927-6648. Internationally at 727-445-1044. Now your hosts, Nico DeHaan and Paige Clark.
Good morning and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle. I'm Paige Clark, and this is where we explore a return to our more natural, wild world.
To recover our natural health and to regain our rights and our freedoms, I'm Nico DeHaan.
And it's a beautiful 82 degrees in downtown Clearwater, Florida, and we hope it's a beautiful day where you are too.
That's for sure. And if you have any questions or comments on the show, you can reach me at nico@tfnn.com.
And Paige at tfnn.com. And we're taking your questions today. Nico.
At 877-927-6648.
So let's talk a little bit about this article that you were sharing. And I think today we might want to talk a little bit about how we can protect our brain function. We both seem to find a lot of articles this week.
This one says, studies suggest new ways to protect against neurodegeneration. I found this on the Suspicious Observer. They were talking about it a week ago Saturday as I was traveling. I was listening to their little fly-on-the-wall show, and they were bringing this up. And it was an interesting article for a couple of reasons. First of all, of course, the research is there that in the brain, the proteins get kind of gummy.
Sounds like something we've been teaching about.
Yeah, and it was interesting because in the article itself, it doesn't really mention sugar, but and I think the reason for this is because the article itself is talking about coming out with a new drug to prevent this. So I was thinking, okay, let me dig a little bit deeper, and one of the things that Ben Davidson and the crew were talking about was that sugar was the culprit on here because they dug deeper like we did. But nowhere in the article does it really mention it. What it does do is many neurodegenerative disorders are caused by accumulation of proteins in the brain. These conditions, and they're called proteinopathies, occur when proteins misfold, causing them to quickly get sticky and clump up in the brain in a form often referred to as plaques or tangles.
That is exactly pretty much the description of glycation or advanced glycation end products, or AGEs is the acronym used for it. So really what this is solidifying the same information we've been sharing, that Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases could very easily be referred to as diabetes type 3.
Exactly.
Or insulin resistance in the brain. The cells are resistant, and the sugars and the high sugar level and the proteins in our body are creating these blockages to health.
Yeah, and we can see in our society through the last 100 years or so that the brain diseases are up front. Maybe it's not the level of cancer, but I think they're all related to that. And as we get older, we have all these things like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, Huntington's disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, all these degenerative brain conditions. And this is another instance of having to dig deeper to find the truth, because if you're just looking at the article itself, which I'm going to put in one of my newsletters, I think the next one, it really talks about proteins, and then you're thinking, okay, now we have to
find something special to do it.
Well, we have to find a certain protein, or we can't eat as much protein. And you and I always talk, we think protein should be 20 or 25% of our calorie intake, and fat about twice that, and then the rest is for the carbs. But the sugar, remember that we're talking about glucose, which sugar turns into, but also we're talking about all the grain products, and all these things are always going to be what causes it. It's the sugars.
And when I read this, what I believe, Nico, is that it's not only the sugars, it's the fact that our bodies are not equipped to deal with the sugar. And as I've been saying, and Dr. Pompa has taught me, we can't be well unless we heal the cell. And the cell membrane is how the sugar gets in and out of the cell, how we get the bad stuff out and the good stuff in. And that's effectively what diabetes type 2 and diabetes type 3 is. And here's this a quote from this article, and It just smells like a rat to me. A study led by biomedical researchers at Indiana University have found evidence that an enzyme known as NMNAT2 may help protect against the debilitating effects of certain degenerative brain diseases, including Alzheimer's. This is the way you open up an article when you're creating a case for the miracle drug. Folks, what this could say is a study led by medical researchers shows that if you didn't eat so much sugar and you maintained your cell membrane integrity, you could avoid Alzheimer's and brain diseases.
Yeah, and really what they're saying in this...
Setting the stage for selling.
Yeah, and they're really talking about the drug that's going to be coming out to take care of this. So this means really what they're saying, folks, is don't change your lifestyle. Eat the crap that you've been eating. You'll be all right because we have another drug here for you.
Just like there's an app for that, there's a drug for that.
That's right. So, it's really important that you get off of these packaged foods, which are really laced with two things: the sugar, maybe the sugar substitutes, probably worse, and then, of course, the carbohydrates that are highly, highly processed. All three things will start doing this to your brain.
And have the same effect.
Yeah. And no matter how good the protein is, when the sugar is added to the protein, this is when you have the glycation, which I really call wrinkling in from the inside.
That is exactly what it is, and I think the acronym AGES, Advanced Glycation End Products, is really apropos. It actually states the fact that glycation and the inability to handle sugars and process them, resulting in this folding, creates the wrinkles and rust inside as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great thing, and I like saying along these lines, let's talk, can I jump over? Are we still covering? Is there some other things we want to share?
No, that's pretty much it on that. It's just that, they really go in depth on that, and there's a link to the article, which I will provide in my next
Yeah, I think people will enjoy seeing that and seeing what's going on. But, there's a lot of other substances that can really help us with our memory, and I wanted to open up. It was funny, we must have been on the same page, no pun intended, but I saw this article about the herbal oil rosemary and its benefits and uses. And I just want to give a quick update because did you know that smelling rosemary essential oil can increase memory and performance up to 75%. So having a little rosemary while you're sitting there trading or reading or whatever, or
these
trying
things
to perform.
Have a big impact. I know my wife lights the incense about 15 minutes before we go into the bedroom to retire, and just entering that room, it just changes your attitude just by the smell. Of course, I use lavender too, and using things like rosemary and using these in special parts of the day to treat yourself to the aroma, and aroma is kind of like, I look at it kind of like nutrition.
It is. Well, it is.
Yeah, it is nutrition, and it's entering the body the easiest way, which is through inhaling.
Or olfaction really works on the limbic part of the brain, which affects our memory of things.
Yeah. And
not just our memory, but emotional memory and lifetime memories.
Yeah, and that's so true, because I remember if I all of a sudden get an old memory, a lot of times I have the same smell. The smell is kind of triggers it. So maybe you're walking by something and you smell something familiar, and that triggers a memory. And I remember that memories do trigger, or smells do trigger memories. Kind of interesting thing.
Yeah, just the thought of like being younger and in the spring in Florida. Because I moved here in the spring.
Oh, okay.
And guess what always blooms wonderfully? The orange blossoms.
Oh, yeah.
So come spring, come those 1975 songs. Get a little
cool.
Get a little melancholy thinking about the past.
Stick around, folks. We got another segment coming up. The number here is 877-927-6648. Please take time to look at our Primal Edge daily supplement and take a look at our newsletter. New one coming out next Tuesday, along with our new exercise coming up too. So stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. Nico and Paige here on Living a Primal Lifestyle. And part of Living a Primal Lifestyle is what we call Tiger Brew Coffee or Bulletproof Coffee. And some news coming out that very hot drinks may cause cancer, but the World Health Association says that coffee does not.
Well, coffee's getting more and more vindication every day as we're finding out healthier ways to enjoy this beverage that's been drank for a long time.
Yeah, and we often say that probably if you're the average American, you're getting most of your antioxidants from the coffee itself, even if you're not drinking organic.
That's sort of a sad fact, but I guess it's reassuring at the same time.
Yeah.
And that basically is because so many people are not eating enough vegetables and foods that are eating the right foods.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. So this article says coffee was classified as a possible cause of cancer in 1991, but the International Agency for Research on Cancer, ARC, which is part of the World Health Organization, has now reconsidered the evidence. It carried out a detailed review of the many studies published on the subject and found that coffee drinkers have no reason to worry.
Well, that's very good, very good. You know, they also studied the South American drink yerba mate, and that drink has also, it's drank at a very high temperature. They drink it through usually like a metal straw because it's so very hot, and they found that the mate was not a cause of cancer either. So it's causing them to think that perhaps it's the temperature that's causing this increased risk of esophageal cancer, and that could very well be. Maybe we're not designed to take temperatures that high into our internal tissues.
Well, one of the things I noticed that being from Holland, and we are big of eating soups and drinking coffee and also drinking teas, but we do like them hot. One of the things I noticed when I was younger, that everybody be cooling down their coffee or their tea, and where I'd be drinking it, or when the soup is hot and it's right in front of me, I'm eating it right away. I'm very used to the hotter temperatures, apparently. I noticed when my wife and I have the same thing, she's waiting for it to cool down, and I'm done when she starts. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I've always been able to drink very hot beverages, and how hot, I don't know. But they mentioned centigrade here. Of course, we're on Fahrenheit, but they anything more than 65 degrees, which is about 150 degrees Fahrenheit.
I wish I knew how to do that math.
Yeah, it's a complicated math. I knew it because it's written down here, so to say. But I know 100 is 212, and I know 0 is 32. So, but you go from there. But there is an easy equation. But this is kind of interesting. I'm not really sold in how hot, 150 degrees. I think 150 degrees is probably about maybe the limit. But I think 120, most people will consume beverages at, because it's just a little bit cooler and easier to take more, perhaps.
Yeah, it says here, studies in animal have shown that very hot water can promote the growth of tumors. It appears that there is thermal injury from exposure to hot liquids that is capable of leading to cancer of the esophagus. And again, is it the damage, or what happens when the body goes to repair it, and maybe bacteria and stuff get into the lining? Because
I think also what you have to consider is that what's the state of the body in when you're consuming this beverage. If you're doing the average SAD diet, the standard American diet, with fast food intermingled, now your cells are not so healthy. So now when they have to respond to extra heat, perhaps they're not able to. And I'm looking at that a little bit more, and I'm thinking that more along the lines than just because it's hot water, it's not going to hurt you, or a hot beverage itself. Could be the beverage, too, if you're drinking hot Pepsi.
And so, just for more reassurance, the scientists found an inverse relationship between drinking coffee and certain types of cancer. The risk of developing liver cancer dropped by 15% for each cup of coffee drank, while in breast cancer and endometrial or womb cancer, studies suggest there were fewer incidences among people who drank coffee than those did not. And I think, we've got some good points there that drinking coffee, but again, I want to caution people, if you drink coffee all day and you don't rehydrate, you've got to balance that coffee intake by the water.
Oh, sure. We're not talking about the coffee drinkers that are drinking 8 or 10 cups.
Going through Starbucks 3 times a day.
Right. I think a coffee drinker in me is 2 cups a day. I have a double espresso in the morning, a double espresso at night. I have my fat in there with it. In the afternoon, I'll add a little bit of honey. That's my drink, and it works quite well for me. It keeps me not hungry. It keeps me energetic. It seems to make it flow. Another thing is, too, and I should mention that our producer is mentioning the same for microwave foods. Well, microwave foods and microwave coffee, completely different, because the microwaves do destroy all the enzymes, all the living things.
There's no place for a microwave, Al. And a microwave, the best thing you can do with a microwave is to sterilize your sponges and just store them in there and pop it on every once in a while to kill the germs on your sponges. But since we are looking for maybe some antioxidant power out of our coffee, we certainly don't want to use a microwave.
No, because then you're destroying the very nutrients you're trying to get out of the coffee. And I have that vision of that little girl, 10 years old, in her science class, bringing to school her plants, and the ones with the just plain tap water, even with the fluoride in it, were growing fine, but the one was the cup of water that she was every day zapping. Those flowers are died.
That's exactly right.
Those plants.
And it's very interesting. A group of friends and I were together a couple weekends ago, part of the Healthy Fit Club. We were doing some testing, and one of the Robbie Bessner brought a Geiger counter. and went around Dr. Bryan's house and was measuring the EMFs from different electronics. Really, believe it or not, there wasn't a lot coming out, even from the refrigerator, which we see. But on the Geiger counter, it was amazing. The microwave oven, even when it wasn't even turned on, was spiked it. Yeah. But when you turned it on, I mean, you had to move like 7-8 feet away from it. And I see people, when they created those microwaves above the oven, or above the stove top, people will cook things in the microwave and stand right in front of that stovetop, and those
their brain
waves.
is right there.
Oh, crazy.
The same thing with cell phones. You know, there's enough of studies saying that if you're using a thing and it's stuck to your ear all the time, you're going to get those microwaves.
Right.
And
use a speakerphone whenever you can there.
Yeah, I think it's something to be concerned about. I think it's something that you need to pay attention to, and you need to really not use the microwave and try to keep away from, you know, the real bad vibes that you get from these electronics. And there's all kinds of things that you can put in the house, like the Himalayan sea salt lamps and things like that.
They create negative ions.
Yeah, and so that really does help it. So coffee drinkers rejoice. There is no evidence whatsoever linking coffee to bladder cancer or any other type of cancer itself. So I encourage you, if you're going to use coffee, get it organic. If you can get it local, even better. There's a lot of really good companies. We have Buddy Brew here in the Bay Area that makes their coffee, gets their beans, and produces it here. So, you know, that's a good thing to do, too. There's a lot of good companies around that are on that free market thing, the embargo-free coffee. I forget what exactly what it's called.
Sustainable.
That's sustainable.
That's raised, you know, with harvesters that are treated fairly and that kind of thing. That's important. And remember, it's not necessarily the food, but what we do to the food. And coffee is a heavily sprayed crop. Some, you know, hundreds of chemicals are sprayed on commercial coffee, and getting an organic coffee will help save you from that exposure to those toxic chemicals as well.
So we're through with this segment. Please pick up our Primal Edge. We have a new newsletter coming out next week on Tuesday, along with the new exercise that you can do. And Paige and I will be back shortly. Our number here is 877-927-6648. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to Living a Primal Lifestyle. I'm Paige Clark, and I'm with Nico DeHaan.
Yeah.
Hey, Nico, you know, after years of committees and debates and panels and et cetera and consensus building, it turns out the FDA has finalized the new nutrition label guidelines, and they have up to 2 years to implement these changes. And we're kind of skeptical, you know. First of all, we say, hey, avoid this. Don't eat foods that have labels on them. That solves the problem. But I think in the case that you do, you need to know how to read them. And so we want to kind of go through these changes so you can be up to speed on what's coming.
Yeah, and the first thing on the list is that they're going to have added sugars. Carbohydrates will now contain a subsection for added sugars, which includes all sugars that do not normally or naturally occur in the food.
And that's a great move,
yes,
because, you know, it's a little misleading. A blueberry contains glucose and fructose, yes, but it also contains anthocyanins, fiber, micronutrients, pigments that are very healthy for us.
Yeah, and if you're juicing and things like that, and you're taking it from the bottle, then most of the time those juices will have added sugar, and now you'll be able to read that that's in there.
Right, and it is an added product to it. Very good. And revised serving sizes is number 2. Serving sizes will reflect what people typically consume in a sitting. Maybe we won't have those serving sizes that are supersized.
Yeah, you know, one of the interesting things, if you have some old china around, you can say the normal little cups that they had in the old days was a serving size, and now we have the larger cups. Same with plates. A smaller, a dessert plate is almost the dinner plate of 100 years ago.
You know, I use my grandmother's china.
Oh, do you?
And all the pieces are exactly as you state.
Yeah.
They're slightly smaller than what you see today, and I enjoy it because I feel like if you set a smaller plate, you keep your portion more in line. And that's what I think we do too much, is we just kind of maybe eat just too much.
Yeah, the evidence is there for sure. And it not only happens with our food, it also happens with our clothes. In Europe, there's standard sizes that stay standard. In Europe, our standards of size are determined by each individual manufacturer.
Oh yes, and the manufacturers, like for women's clothing, mini 2s are quite large, but women love being able to say they're in a size 2. Hey, number 3, added micronutrients. The food's vitamin D and potassium content are required to be displayed. Well, that's great, folks. And, you know, again, we have to question, those of us that are in natural health wonder what the quality of the added nutrients are that they're adding. We know that the best place that we get our vitamin D is some 15 to 40 minutes of well-placed sun 3 to 4 times a week will really help you go there. But we'll be looking forward to seeing these added nutrients.
Yeah, and of course they have now removed micronutrients too. So there's a lot of foods through the process of their sterilization program perhaps, or that they need to put something else in it to bind the food together so it doesn't just clump, or it clumps up instead of whatever. And also they use it to enhance the flavors. We know that we have talked in the past weeks about how our nutrition is tied to our smell and our taste,
yes.
And it's driven by that. And of course we now have all these fake flavors which we can reproduce synthetically that are put in the food to trick us that we're actually getting the nutrients. And if we're not getting the nutrients, remember we stated that you will keep on eating, because your body is deficient in it. So it thinks it's getting it, so you keep eating.
Yeah, the hormones that signal to stop eating get all astray, because if you're not getting the nutrition, the body is still going to seek it. So I find that very interesting that they removed some micronutrients and they added others, why some won out and some didn't. But again, if you eat foods that don't have labels, you're more likely to get those nutrients. Yep. And then again, the actual quantity of them. Getting absolute amounts of the micronutrients is huge. Not everyone eats the 2,000 calorie a day diet. And this reduces the utility of the percentage of daily value. You know, if you're smaller like me and you're not eating that amount, or you're eating more, that kind of sends those numbers askew, don't you?
Yeah,
agree?
I think so too. The daily values are updated. The daily values for fiber, sodium, vitamin D have been updated to reflect new scientific consensus. Whereas 4 grams of fiber used to comprise 16% of your DV, your daily value. It's now 14%. Sodium daily value was previously based on 2,400 milligrams daily amount. Now it's 2,300.
I mean, to me, that's all kind of
it's kind of
crazy.
Yeah.
The scientific consensus can be kind of iffy, and again, I think the key thing is you want to look for. I think the most powerful thing that they're doing, regardless of these, is letting you see where the hidden sugars are. This is significant, kind of like a couple of years ago when they required trans fat labeling, and just it wasn't just fat, but there had to be a subcategory in the fats. But remember that trans fat number is still misleading, folks, because they are allowed to put 0 for trans fats, even if there's up to 0.5, or maybe even up to 0.1 it might be. In other words, as long as it's not 1,
it's less than 1.
Then they can say 0. So that's a little bit misleading there.
The other thing, increased prominence of calories and servings per container. Servings per container is always confusing people. I think a lot of people don't even read that part, and
it's important because
they think the container may be a serving.
Right. Many times a serving is 3 or 4 servings, and the calories reflected are per serving. So you got to be careful that you could overeat
easily.
Calories from fat removed. The new label no longer lists the amount of calories derived from fat. Yes, since fat is more calorically dense than other macronutrients, most people consume calories are the most important aspect of food's healthfulness, which is not true. Using calories to represent fat's contribution paints fat as the bad guy. Eliminating the calories from fat encourages consumers to evaluate the food on its merits.
Yeah, I don't even consider calorie counting something that's viable to weight loss itself. It may be a track to run on if you're very satisfied with what you're eating and you're eating a good, good meals during the day, and you add up those calories and you say, well, I'm eating 3,000, and the next day you do the same thing, you're eating 3,000. That may be the value for you. It may not be for somebody else, however.
Yeah. So what we can offer here before we close is what are some things we would add if we could, and this is from Mark's Daily Apple. Let's talk about if we had our wish list of what we could see on the labels. How about ORAC? ORAC is a antioxidants free radical scavenging ability. It stands for oxygen radical absorbance capacity. We need antioxidant. It'd be nice to know if that food offered us antioxidant protection.
Yeah, they need to be clear on things. I think it's very confusing when they list, the vitamins, the vitamin B, B12, and all these things.
The individual percentage, like that 23 to 2400, doesn't matter. Let's talk about the ability of that food to help us fight inflammation.
And remember that what you mentioned before, too, very, very important, is that if you're reading a label and it has these things on it, it's probably not a whole food.
Exactly. And that's where we want to know where are these micronutrients that they're adding. Maybe we define more clearly some of the more important micronutrients. And we'd have added clarity on this label. For example, a lot of these added fats like omegas and vitamin A or vitamin D are actually synthetic forms and may not be that great for us. It'd be nice to know, is it synthetic or is it naturally derived? Many supplement companies do that, by the way.
Yeah, so I think what you need to look at, folks, is when there's a label on it that's describing what you have, maybe you're picking the wrong food. If you go to the butcher shop and get your meat or from a farmer, or if you're going to your local food co-op or maybe a farmer's market, you're going to find the packages of vegetables.
You're going to find your labels on there.
Exactly, and that's the place you really want to be. So look in your cart, and if you've got more than 3/4 of your stuff coming from labels, you probably need to change your diet.
And that's true, and I saw that one of the great ways to represent sugar is to list it in teaspoons. Just like we know you eat a piece of bread, it's equivalent to 8 teaspoons of sugar. That might have more of a visual impact for us instead of grams. Wouldn't that be nice? This has the equivalent of X amount of teaspoons. So those are some tips to help you with the new nutritional labels. We've got to take a break. We'll see you right when we get back.
Welcome back to the show, folks. Nico and Paige here. We're talking about lots of different things, but there are new technologies in science that are going to shape our lives in years to come, and I want to talk about these a little bit.
Yeah, this was in the Huffington Post, and what really intrigued me, this was shared to me by our Chief Science Officer over at Healthy Fit Club, Robbie Bessner. And it's amazing that many of the things may seem like science fiction, but it's actually coming to fruition now, and it's really going to help us lead healthier lives.
Yeah, there's the first one mentioned here is called organic electronics. While some branches of science focus on making machines act more like living creatures, organic electronics focuses on making organic elements behave more like machines. Using this new technology, scientists are working out ways to control the neurotransmitters in our cells in much the same way we can control our electronic devices. Technology is already revolutionizing the way we design and integrate prosthetics and other medical devices. Certainly lots of good news in that area.
And nutrigenomics, which is the effect of nutrition on the genes. You've heard that you are what you eat, and that but the emerging science of nutrigenomics is taking that saying to extremes. Basically, nutrigenomics studies the way that food affects the genes, and it's good, and it can be good, and it can be bad if you're eating the wrong kind of food. As they learn, they're looking for great ways that the diet can complement or even alter our genes, and in the near future, it's not a question that food will be viewed and valued for the positive effects it can have in ideal gene expression.
Another one is synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is the science of creating biological organisms through the technical means. Already they've created a computer model of a bacteria and manufactured a synthetic cell.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, the possibilities for applying synthetic biology are tantalizing, designed and creating brand new microorganisms from scratch. I'm on the fence about this one, but I do believe the scientists do have great intentions in this, but when they start messing with my biology, then I may be barking a little bit louder. What do you think?
I'm concerned about the fact that some of that could be happening. When we say there's a movie out, what in the world are they spraying? And we know a lot of the sprays are perhaps for weather modification and control, but you often wonder just how that's impacting our cells and how it might be impacting some of our own hormones and transmitters. Maybe you can scroll up. I don't know if that can scroll or not, but number 4 is very interesting that this was in the Huffington Post, and the number 4 is Redux Signaling Technology. And this is a product that has the patent for stabilizing the redox molecule, which is the way that we balance reduction and oxidation in our body. This is a brand. I use this with my clients. I see it as a fantastic product that reactivates the antioxidants in our body. Athletes are using it. It's been around for eons, but it isn't until recently that we've been able to learn how important they are, and then Dr. Samuelson was able to actually stabilize this molecule. So we think that this new cellular healing technology is going to radically change the way we stay healthy.
Yeah, and the last one, number 5, is
neuromorphic engineering.
And that really had its roots in 1980. It's becoming pretty impressive, they say. Basically, it's creating computer systems that act like living organisms. And again, they're kind of putting robots in us.
Yeah, some of that's really crazy, but what I was really pleased to see was the advanced cellular technology of ASEA. And because I think that this is something that I can, some of these other things sound kind of crazy and out there, but technology is changing and it will have beneficial effects.
Well, from a point of view, I was listening to a podcast actually from the University of Southern California, San Diego, and it was a panel, and they were discussing, is meat good or bad? Pretty interesting discussion, but everybody had their own agenda. We had one guy on the left end of the panel that was really talking about what is sustainable from a scientific point of view. And of course, they're talking about GMOs, and this is what we have to have, and we have to grow more and more of this plant food, mostly grains and things like that, because otherwise...
Which is not what they're supposed to eat.
Well, definitely not, but this is the future. He says this is the only way. Of course, completely against meat. There was a whole panel there, a lot of them vegan or vegetarian. There was a guy there from thinking more along the lines I was, but nobody really got their whole piece in. And it was interesting because the nutritionist that was there, and I forget her name, but she was right on point of talking about all the different things that our natural food has in it. And of course the
animal concentrators.
Yeah, the animal concentrators. And of course we got around to the vegan, who was completely vegan. She was just a cook, and basically how to make vegetarian meals fun and stuff like that. Really dynamic person. But she says, we can get everything we need from plants. And the nutritionist says, well, wait a minute, you're talking about the omega-3s from flax seeds and all these things, and it's not in the same form that we digest. And she says, but people say, well, that's a minor point, and just sloughing off, and same with the K2 she was mentioning, but that was kind of sloughed off. Well, that's a scientific nutritional point of view. Yes, we can get everything from plants. There's no doubt about it. But then we had the farmer next to her saying,
and the B12.
Yeah, and the B12s too, yeah. And they had the person next to her saying, well, wait a minute, there are ways of sustaining things. And the guy who was really from our camp was saying, what we need more of is the old grasslands. Instead of having the wheat and the corn growing through our middle states, we need these animals. And
grazing on the grass, and the chickens following and pecking through.
And he said, we need to make the world more wild. And the other guy, of course, who was from the manufacturer, says, well, there's no way we can do that again. But I think there is ways we can do that again. I think there's lots of ways we can do it, because we do know, Paige, that the wild things are more nutritious, whether it's animal or plant, doesn't really make much difference.
We need to go where the wild things are.
Yeah.
Do you remember that book?
No.
Where the Wild Things Are?
No, I don't. But I like the title.
Yeah. It was well, you should get it for your grandbabies.
There you go.
Yeah, I know, because it's about going where the wild things are.
Yeah, so I think getting back to the natural way, and I think really, truly, in our modern society, the only way we can get back control of our lives is through the food, because I think food is a community-based thing, and we've taken it away, and we put
commercialized it.
Yeah, we commercialized it, so now our food is coming from everywhere. It's not coming from our local. But imagine if everybody in your neighborhoods, you take 50 houses, and everybody was growing something, or some people were hunting, perhaps, and then you get a community cooking going on. Not only do you have the community of eating, but now you have the community of conversation, a community of what everybody has in common or different with each other.
Generational integration.
And much better way to protect ourselves when something bad happens, because now we're a community that we can count on. It's very difficult. We went away for 10 days. And I have good neighbors. They're watching the house for me and stuff like that. And maybe people sitting in the house for a period of time, that type of thing. But if you have a whole community that's like that, that knows you're leaving and knows what you're about, then the safety factor comes in. So when we're talking about these mass killings and everything like that, I still go back to that. The solution can be started at the food, where we start growing locally. We do away with all these trucks on the highway. We do away with our big manufacturers, and we start gaining control of our lives again.
And when we think about that, we're going to talk a little bit about the next article, is the attitudes of aging and living life too fast. And what we think about, we bring about. So exactly, maybe we all need to think about and bring about a return to living a primal lifestyle, getting rid of the trucks.
I like that.
Yeah, and getting back and getting in touch with nature, getting in touch with our family and our friends, and instead of having text neck and, looking at them on a screen. Let's go out and sit around a campfire.
Connect with people, not your devices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll take a short break here.
Yeah, please pick up our Primal Edge. Pick up our brand new newsletter coming out on Tuesday. The old ones are still hanging around there, and got
Good
plenty
stuff.
to read. So stick around, folks. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Did you know that research is quite clear and intriguing? That a positive attitude about your age can help you to stay happy and healthy well into your golden years, Nico.
Yeah, the way you view old age may have a real effect on your physical health. In a study by researchers at the University of Exeter, 29 people between the ages of 66 and 98 were asked about their experience of aging and frailty, as well as their beliefs about the attitudes important in health. While most of the people believed they were in good physical shape, even those who weren't, 2 people identified them as old and frail. The negative outlook led to a cycle of decline, including stopping in participation of social activities and exercise.
I get very worried about that cocooning I see in older people when they stop getting out and about and feel like they...
You can almost see the cobwebs starting to form.
But it is true. What you think about, you bring about. And I always tell people, be careful what you think, because every one of your trillions of cells are listening, and they're ready to activate on what you think about. So I think we need to toss out this nonsense that, old is something and disease is something we should expect. Not so at all. We are designed to live and thrive and be healthy well into our years. And I think if we really embrace that, we can achieve it and feel it for ourselves.
My dad had a wonderful saying. He had many wonderful sayings, but one I clearly remember is, how lucky can I be, or how lucky can I get? And he used this phrase.
Right.
My dad got cancer at the age of 72 and died when he was 74 years old. And he knew he was dying. And so he set my mother up in a nice condo, moved her close to where my sister lived in Tallahassee, and really set her up for life the right way, making sure that she was going to be taken care of. About 2 months before he passed away, which was around Christmas time, we had a family gather and a bunch of uncles and everything. We all gathered around the table, and my dad made this 15-minute speech called How Lucky Can I Be? Really interesting because he started out saying that he was 18, 19 years old, and he met this gorgeous girl. They were both in this bicycle club. She was from The Hague, he was from Amsterdam, and he told himself, could I be this lucky that this girl would actually date me and then marry me? And then finally, when he asked her and things, of course, he said, boy, I'm so lucky. Then after a couple of miscarriages, my mother gave birth to my sister, and he was so happy because what he wanted was a girl. And I was born in 1944 during the hunger winter in Holland, and he got a call. He was in the underground at that time, so he was out hiding, and he got a message that his son was being born. He didn't know it was a son at the same time. He rushed to the hospital, and the nurse was there, and she says, "Oh, I heard I had a baby." And she says, "Yes, what would you like?" He says, "Oh, as long as it's healthy." He says, "But what would you secretly want?" He says, "Well, if I'm the luckiest guy in the world, I have a son because I have a daughter." And she says, "You are that lucky."
Aww.
So he went through this whole story of how he came to Canada and sponsored our whole family, and finally felt how lucky he felt that he had a good job working in the mines, real hard working, so he could buy a house, having his all our aunts and uncles coming over, being sponsored, and us learning English, and then finally coming to the United States when bad times were in Canada in the early 60s, and me going to university, and my sister going to university. And at the end of this whole speech, he said, I feel today I'm the luckiest man in the world, because most people don't have a chance to know when they're going to leave this life. He says, I happen to be that lucky person that knows, and I can stay here and spend some time with you one-on-one and tell you how grateful I am to have you in my life. And that was my dad. And that's how I got my really good positive attitude about life.
And you do.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful story.
So this really hits home with me that, you can change the way you think by adding that positively beautiful thing that you have, your mind going in the right direction, being positive and good about life.
Someone really wise said to me, every day just wake up and say thank you.
Yeah.
How lucky can you be? Thank you.
And that's where prayer really comes from.
That's right.
Yep.
And so we're thankful for you.
Thanks
Have
for
a great
sticking around,
day.
folks. We'll see you next time.
You're watching Tiger TV.